Glad to have you on my channel. My name is Michael, and I'm a passionate language learner. I created this channel with the central theme of learning languages in the hopes of sharing my own experiences, my struggles, and my tips with other language learners. I wanted to start by chronicling my journey learning Mandarin Chinese, which I began around 6 years ago. I've been studying on and off, and I faced many obstacles. I've plateaued, I've hit walls, and so I feel that there's some insight that I might be able to share. Now, you might be asking yourself, why not just learn from a native speaker? In high school, I had an English teacher who would share with the class that he excelled in math, but his least favorite subject was English. So you might be wondering why he became an English teacher and not a math teacher. It was because math came to him so easily. Have you ever had someone say to you something to the effect of, "How could you not understand this? It's so simple"? I've had some teachers like that. And it comes from the ability to pick up a topic or subject so easily that you can't even imagine how someone could be confused with that topic. And when you lack that understanding, then you lack the ability to break down or to simplify a topic in a way that you can help those who are struggling better understand it. That was what my teacher was afraid of. He was afraid that he was too good in math and that he wouldn't be able to explain it to those who were struggling. That is why he became an English teacher, because he understood that struggle, because he was able to say, "Hey, I get it. I know why you're struggling, and I can help you out because I've been through that same struggle as well." And so here I am to let you know that I understand the struggles of learning Chinese. And not to disparage native speakers, but learning Chinese, or any language for that matter, as a first language is different than learning a second language. And that's the perspective that I want to give. That of an English native speaker learning Chinese, which is not a unique perspective here on YouTube. But I feel what makes my channel a little different is the fact that those channels are at a fluent level. Chinese as a second language, but at a fluent level, whereas I am currently in an intermediate level. I wish I had started this channel when I was a beginner level to show you the entire journey, but have no fear, there's plenty of other languages for me to learn. I know two so far, English and Spanish. Chinese, more specifically Mandarin, would be my third language, and I do have a desire to learn Cantonese, which is the second most common Chinese language. But we can discuss languages in another video. Now I want to go over the actual contents of my videos. A couple that I'm considering are travel vlog styles, in which I would use to introduce vocabulary. I would also like to do PowerPoints or in-classroom lessons to go over grammar and writing of Chinese. But before actually learning Chinese, there's a few fundamental concepts that you have to understand first. And some of these concepts can be quite intimidating with how different they are from English. One example that you'll come across first when learning Mandarin is the fact that Mandarin is a tonal language. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be able to sing. There's only 4 tones. It's not too complex. And you don't have to hit those tones perfectly. You just have to be able to differentiate them. Let's use ma as an example. The first tone is a high sustained tone, ma. The second is a rising tone, ma. The third is a dropping and rising tone, ma. Or you can just use a mid sustained tone, ma. And the fourth is a dropping tone, almost as if you were scolding someone, ma. Now the reason these tones are so important is because they change the meaning. So the first tone, ma, refers to mother. The second tone, ma, refers to hemp. The third tone, ma, refers to horse. And the fourth tone, ma, is to scold. Now, these tones don't have to be exactly perfect. I myself struggle with the third tone myself, but they should at the very least be distinct. Now, if tones as a concept is something you're struggling with already, don't worry about it. Even after years of learning Chinese, I'm still trying to master tones. Even native speakers would sometimes get lazy or ignore some tones. If you listen to Mandarin songs, they almost always throw the concept of the tones out the window as it clashes with harmonies and rhythm anyways. Now, this is not to say that tones are important, just that you shouldn't worry too much about them. It's something you get to work on for your entire Chinese learning life. And speaking of skills that you will have to work on your entire Chinese life, let's go over the second concept, which is sounds in Chinese, which some of them are found in English, but quite a fair bit of them are not. And I'll have some resources in the description to give you a better insight into the sounds that you'll find in Chinese. As for my own experiences, I feel fairly confident in most of the sounds, perhaps one or two that still elude me. And sometimes I get a little lazy and I mispronounce some sounds, and my friends correct me on it, but that's all part of the learning process, which I hope to share with all of you. But for now, just listen and repeat. And if there are any pronunciations that I make a mistake on, I'll be sure to make a note of it on screen. With that said, let's get started on learning some vocabulary. Now, probably the most important vocabularies you want to learn at first are pronouns. Let's start with the first person I or me, which in Mandarin is 我. 我. Now that's a third tone. Remember, it's lowering and rising. 我. Now you really want to round out your lips when you're saying this, almost to an exaggerated level. One thing I noticed with Chinese is that a lot of the sounds are exaggerated compared to English. So you really want to exaggerate the 我. Now let's do the second person, you, which would be 你. Same tone, third tone, which is lowering and rising. 你. There's also a formal version, which is pronounced 您, kind of with an N sound in the end, 您. But this one's rarely used. Now let's move on to the third person. He, she, it. This is all going to be 他, first tone. 他. So you might be wondering, how do you distinguish between gender in Mandarin? It's going to be based on context. Get ready to hear this a lot because Mandarin Chinese is a very contextual language. As an example of this, there's no past tense in Mandarin Chinese. You don't need to conjugate verbs, whereas in English we have eat for the present tense and ate for the past tense. In Mandarin Chinese, it's all the same character. It's 吃. Regardless if you're eating right now, you say 吃. If you ate yesterday, it's still 吃. Instead, you use context by establishing the time at the beginning of the sentence. Usually you say, today I eat, yesterday I ate, tomorrow I will eat. It's all the same in Mandarin. Another character you can use is the character le, which establishes that an action has been completed, which kind of acts as the past tense. It's not quite the past tense, you shouldn't think of it that way, but instead it shows that an action has been completed already and helps to establish that timeline. And we also have the character hui, which has the same meaning as will. That establishes the future tense. So if you were to say, I will eat, in Mandarin, that's 我会吃. But you also have to make note of the time. Time is very important in Chinese. Many sentences you would need to use a time word, and usually goes in the beginning for Mandarin Chinese. Typically, time is the beginning of each sentence. So if you were to say tomorrow, which is 明天, you say 明天我会吃. Tomorrow I will eat. But again, notice that in each of those example sentences, the verb to eat remains the same. 吃. Regardless of if you're talking about yesterday, it's 吃. If you're talking about today, it's 吃. If you're talking about tomorrow, it's 吃. So in that aspect, Chinese can actually be easier than English, where you don't have to learn all these different forms, some of which are spelled differently. Take, for example, the verb to be, which can be am or are or is or was, while in Mandarin Chinese, it's always going to be 是. I am becomes 我是. You are becomes 你是. Yesterday I was becomes 昨天我是. Notice that it never changes. It always remains 是. So in that aspect, 方面, Mandarin Chinese can actually be easier than in English. Hopefully that's reassuring to you. Anyways, that's a sample of some of the contents that'll be in my video. I have discussions about vocabulary. I'll go over grammar. We can have discussions about the philosophical side of the language, about my own experiences, and be sure to leave me some comments and feedbacks. I look forward to answering any questions you might have and discussing my future plans for this YouTube channel. 再见。